Hey everyone, my name is Ben Heisch, and this is going to be my practical review of the Canon EOS 3. Now, if you've watched any of the videos on this channel, you know that I am just kind of like a sucker for photography. I'm a sucker for aesthetics and the general user experience. I typically photograph with Leica cameras, which are all manual focus. They are a lot more of a almost like rudimentary version of photography that forces me to think really deeply, think really clearly, and makes me really think about every single frame that I'm taking. I also love to shoot with medium format, Hasselblads and stuff like that are just a lot of work. Now this is the camera that if I want to shoot film and I don't want to have a lot of work, this is what I'm picking up. This camera is basically, if you have ever shot a Canon 5D series of cameras, you are looking at a mirror image of something that is going to be incredibly familiar to you. And so if you are a photographer that is considering getting into film or something like that, the Canon EOS 3, the Canon 1V, the Canon 1N, that kind of series of cameras is going to feel really familiar, but also a lot of the settings and autofocus and that kind of thing aren't going to be something that's going to throw you for a loop. You're definitely not going to get, the vintage aesthetics of like a Canon A1 or an AE1, but what you're going to kind of like miss out on aesthetics and like feeling like you're a cool hipster are going to be a zillion different like amazing features. It's gonna have, like double exposure modes, burst modes. You're basically photographing with the equivalent of the 5D series in a film camera. Now, one of the things that's actually pretty amazing is the autofocus in here is really great. I'm not gonna go too deep into all the features because there honestly are a ton of features on this camera. And my friend Joe Tobiasen did an amazing video that I will link below if you want to check out a little bit more in depth and see a ton of different features. And one of the things that he did point out, which I've experienced as well, and it's one of the reasons I honestly have this Canon Nifty 50, the 50 1.8 STM lens. New, it's $125 or something in that ballpark, and it works amazing. The Canon 50L, the first version, the EF version that fits on this camera, for whatever reason, just never worked well for me on this. And I saw Joe said the same thing in his video. And so just a heads up, if you're going to want to photograph with the 50L specifically, as I know a lot of people want to shoot film with 50 millimeters, I don't know what the deal is with this camera, but buy a 1V. That's my disclaimer about this. Otherwise, this camera paired with this lens is awesome. A lot of times if I'm at a wedding and I really want to just kind of like fire off a lot of shots, I want to trust this camera because it has aperture priority. If I want just like good autofocus, a good meter, just a lot of stuff that is programmable and a little bit more high tech, this is the thing that I reach for. 50 millimeters on a film camera, especially for a wedding, for details. I just find that it becomes a really, really great camera for me. It allows me to have different autofocus modes. It has a ton of different autofocus points as well. I don't necessarily use the eye autofocus. I've just never found it to be super reliable, but the concept of it is amazing. You can set your ISO, so I usually do half of whatever my ISO is. So right now I have Portrait 800 in here, so I'm photographing Portrait 800 at ISO 400. And then a lot of times that I'll just toss this, it's in manual right now, but often I'll toss it into aperture priority, and it just gives me a lot of amazing options. These cameras come in at, around like 250 to 300 bucks. And for what you're getting out of this, it's a pretty amazing deal, especially if you are already a photographer who shoots Canon and has some EF glass. I find that this ends up being a really great camera. You can definitely spend, almost double that to pick up a 1V. But for my use case and for my needs, I find that the EOS 3 kind of checks all of my boxes. It's one of the few cameras that I have sold and then repurchased and then sold and repurchased back and forth and back and forth. And I think that I just will always keep this, even just with this lens, in my arsenal because it's just so versatile, so easy to use. And again, those times where I just want all out function. I don't care about the experience. I don't care about the aesthetics. I just want a camera that works and works well and has every different function that I could ask for. This is what I reach for. So thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions about this camera, again, I will leave a link to Joe's video down below. But then I will also, answer any questions you might have. I've been photographing with one of these for the last decade or so. So I've shot hundreds of rolls through one and have just a ton of experience using it. And then if you are into photography, if you are into gear reviews and cameras and stuff like this is the kind of stuff that I just love watching on YouTube. It's the reason I started a channel because I just love doing this kind of stuff. So if you love gear and you love just hearing me blab on about this, subscribing would be great because I have a ton of other videos similar to this one that break down lots of other cameras. So thanks again, and I will see you on the next one.